friends, welcome to English Study Point. Today in this video lecture I am going to explain you general prologue of Geoffrey Chaucer. So let's first start with an introduction. Geoffrey Chaucer, referred to as the father of English literature, was born around 1343 in London to a prosperous family engaged in the wine trade. So Chaucer is called the father of English literature because he was one of the first important writers in English. He was born around 1343 in London into a well-off family that sold wine. Throughout his life, he held various positions, including a courtier, diplomat, and civil servant, which exposed him to the complexities of medieval society and influences from different cultures. So during his life, Chaucer worked in different roles like serving the royal court, negotiating for the government, and working for the city. So these jobs helped him understand the complex society of his time and learn from various cultures. Chaucer's literary career began in the late 14th century during a period when the English language was undergoing significant changes, moving from Old English to a more recognizable Middle English. This means Chaucer started writing in the late 1300s when the English language was changing from Old English, which was hard to understand today, to Middle English, which is closer to the English we speak now. He used satire and keenly observed human nature. He employs a stark realism in his depictions of various social classes and insights into their motives, behaviors, and moral values. He adeptly blended humor and serious themes addressing complex issues such as corruption in the church and societal norms. His use of iambic pentameter and rhyme royal demonstrates his mastery of poetic form, making his work both engaging and accessible. So here we get to know that Chaucer often used satire, which is humor or irony, to criticize ideas or people. He also carefully observed and understood how people behave in society, and his writing realistically portrayed different social classes, showing their characteristics, desires, actions, and moral beliefs in a straightforward way. And also he skillfully mixed funny and serious topics in his stories, often tackling difficult issues like corruption in the church and societal expectations. And he wrote in specific poetic style called iambic pentameter, which has a rhythm, and also used rhyme royal, which is a particular rhyming pattern. So this shows his skill in poetry, making his works enjoyable and easy to read for many people. Now this is introduction to this general prologue, and here we get glimpses into what this prologue is all about. So Chaucer general prologue is an introductory section of the Canterbury Tales where the author presents a diverse group of pilgrims embarking on a journey to Canterbury. He provides detailed description of each character's appearance, so how they look like, and also talks about their profession, so which type of activity, means economical activity, these people are engaged in, and also talk about their status or personality. Chaucer provides insight into the social classes and moral values of 14th century England. This prologue sets the stage for the storytelling and employs satire to critique contemporary society. Now here I am going to explain you each particular stanza line by line. When that April with his shores suit. So April is characterized by sweet rains. The arrival of spring is depicted as refreshing and rejuvenating. The drought of March hath pushed to the roots. This means the dryness of March penetrates the earth, emphasizing the transition from winter to spring as vital for growth, and bathed every vein in switch liquor. This means rain nourishes all plants. Here vein means all type of plants and suggests life-giving qualities of nature, showcasing the interconnectedness of natural elements, of which virtue engendered is the flower. So the rain leads to the blossoming of flowers, highlighting this quality of regeneration, and the miracle of nature's cycle. When Zephyrus eke with his sweet breath, so the west wind, called as Zephyrus, brings warmth and life, personifying nature's forces and indicating a time of renewal. Inspired hath in every holt and heath. This means nature's breath sparks life in all habitats, groves, and heaths, pointing to a universal awakening. The tender crops and the young sun. So, the young sun supporting new growth emphasizes vitality, symbolizing hope and renewal in the natural world. Hath in the ram his half, course ye roan. So the sun has moved halfway through Aries, marking the time of year and reflecting the cycle of the seasons. And small fowls make in melody. So birds sing joyfully, serving as symbols of life and happiness, enhancing the joyful atmosphere of spring. The sleeping all the night with open ye. Birds are depicted as aware and vigilant, adding a layer of alertness to their natural behavior and circumstances. So pricketh him nature in his courages. Nature stirs an urge within them, means within the birds, indicating that instinct drives all living beings towards their natural rhythms. Thane longing folk to goon on pilgrimage. So, this awakening prompts humans to embark on spiritual journeys, suggesting a longing for connection and purpose in life. And Palmer's for to second staunch strondies. So, pilgrims, these are actually pilgrims who seek out new and foreign places for spiritual fulfillment, reinforcing exploration and faith. Then we see two fern halves north in Sondry lawns. So they aim to visit far off saints, underlining the importance of diverse cultural and spiritual practices, and specially from every shire's end. So they focus on pilgrims coming from all corners of England, which indicates the widespread desire for pilgrimage. Of England to Canterbury they went. So the destination is Canterbury, highlighting its significance as a holy site and a communal goal for pilgrims. The holy blissful martyr for to sake. This means that they seek the holy martyr Thomas Becket, adding a specific religious focus that drives their journey. That him hath holpen when that they were seek. So Becket is depicted as a protector who has aided those in need, emphasizing faith's role in healing and solace. Now here we see Befill that in that season on a day. So the speaker recalls a specific time, suggesting a sense of nostalgia. Here the term Bilfil indicates that an event occurred, introducing a story that is about to unfold. In Southwark at the Tabard as I lay. So setting the scene at the Tabard Inn in Southwark, London, this particular line gives a geographical anchor and establishes the context for the forthcoming pilgrimage. Ready to wend in on my pilgrimage. So the narrator is preparing for a pilgrimage, indicating a specific or spiritual journey. Venden here conveys movement and intention, emphasizing a goal of seeking redemption or grace. To Canterbury with full devout courage. So the destination is Canterbury, a renowned pilgrimage site. Full devout courage highlights the narrator's sincere motivation and spiritual commitment. At night were come into that hostelier. So the arrival happens at night, setting a subdued mood and creating a sense of community as travelers gather in one place. Well, 9 and 20 in a campaign. So the narrator counts 29 fellow pilgrims. This showcased the collective nature of the journey, building anticipation for the interactions among various characters. Of Sondry Folk by Adventure Ye Fail. This phrase, Sondri folk, emphasizes the diversity of the group, suggesting a mix of social classes and backgrounds, and thereby enhancing the narrative's richness through varied perspectives. In a fellowship and pilgrimage, they were ale. They ale. So the term fellowship reinforces camaraderie, friendship among the pilgrims, highlighting a shared purpose despite their differences. That toward toward Canterbury Walden Ride. So this line reiterates their goal of riding to Canterbury, reaffirming the central premise of the pilgrimage and the journey ahead. The chambers and the stables were wide. They try to describe the inn spacious inns, means tabard inns, spacious accommodation, which suggests comfort and hospitality, indicating the importance of physical setting for pilgrims before their journey. And well, we were eased ettle best. So the phrase reflects the group's satisfaction with their lodgings, hinting at the communal aspect of their experience and the bonds formed over shared comfort. And shortly, when the sun was to rest. So, as day transitions to night, this line particularly signifies a time for reflection and readiness, hinting at the interconnectedness of time and spiritual readiness. So had I spoken with him every chon. So the narrator interacts with each fellow pilgrim, emphasizing the importance of personal connections and establishing the groundwork for upcoming stories and interactions. That I was of her fellowship Annan. So this line indicates that the narrator is readily accepted into their company, highlighting inclusivity and community in shared purpose, and made forward early for to rise. So the narrator expresses plans for an early departure, reflecting the urgency and seriousness of their pilgrimage, indicative of the commitment to spiritual endeavors to take or way there as IO device. So the narrator invites the audience to follow along on the journey, setting the stage for the tales that will unfold and establishing a personal connection with the reader. But nonetheless, will I have time and space? This means, even so, while I have the time and opportunity. So the narrator emphasizes the importance of taking time to introduce the characters properly, ere that I further in this tale pace. This means, before I continue further in this story, so this particular line indicates a pause for necessary exposition before the narrative advances. Me thinketh it accordant to reason. So it means that it seems reasonable to me. So the narrator believes that providing background information is logical. To tell you all the condition, this means to tell you about the condition of each person. So the intention is to offer insight into the character's personality and circumstances of each of him, so as it seemed me. This means about each one as it appeared to me. So the descriptions come from the narrator's subjective views, suggesting potential biases and which they were in and of what degree, who they were and what rank they held. So this shows social stratification among the characters, establishing context for their tales, and eke in what array that they were in, and also in what clothing they were dressed. So clothing here serves as a visual representation of social status and character traits. And at a night then wole I first beginning. So I will begin with the knight first. The knight is presented as a noble figure, setting a tone for honor and chivalry among the pilgrims. Here we notice a knight there was, and that a worthy man. So there was a knight and he was a worthy man. The introduction establishes the knight's character as someone who is noble and admirable, setting him apart from the other characters that flow the time that he first began. So from the first time he first started, this suggests a long history of commitment to his ideals, indicating deep-rooted values. To written out, he loved chivalry. So he loved chivalry since he began to ride out. So the knight's passion for chivalry highlights his adherence to code of honor, bravery and service. Truth and honor, freedom and courtesy. Truth, honor, freedom and courtesy are values which define the knight's character, which is essential for a chivalric hero. Full worthy was he in his lord's war. So he was very worthy in his Lord's service. This reinforces his loyalty and effectiveness as a knight, reflecting positively on his character. And there too hate he ridden no men fear. So he has ridden farther than any man. This thing implies his extensive experience and bravery in battle, enhancing his reputation as well in Christendom as in the heathness. So, both in Christendom and among pagans, his exploits span diverse cultures, suggesting versatility and wide ranging combat skills, and ever honored for his worthiness. So he was always honored for his worthiness. The knight's consistent recognition speaks to his exemplary conduct and skill. At Alexandria, he was when it was won. So he was at Alexandria when it was conquered. This specific reference highlights his participation in significant historical events, enhancing his credibility. Full of time, he hath the board bygone. So he often had started the table, which is a reference to leading a feast or battle. This particular line suggests leadership and a dominant role in social and military gatherings. Then we see above nations in Prus. So, above all nations in Prussia, this thing indicates his superiority and skill in warfare during campaigns, enhancing his heroic stature. In Leto, he raised and in Rus. So, he had campaigned in Lithuania and Russia. This thing further demonstrates his extensive military experience and valor across multiple regions. No Christian men so oft of his degree. No Christian men of his rank had fought as often. So this line emphasizes his prowess and distinction among peers. In journeyed at the siege eke had he been. So he had also been at the siege of Grenada. His participation in prominent military events underlines his dedication to the Christian cause. Of Algezir and ridden in Belmir. So he had fought at Algeciras and ridden in Belmeria. So these specific battles shows his involvement in significant military campaigns, enhancing his heroic image. At Lays was he and at Satali. So he was at Lais and at Satala. Again reinforces the idea of his widespread military engages and honors when they were won and in the Great Sea. So when they were won and in the Great Sea, his victories demonstrates competence and accomplishment in his field. At many a noble army hath he been. So he had been at many noble armies. This particular final note rounds off his character sketch by affirming his frequent participation in distinguished military actions. Now here we see at mortal battles had he been 15. So the knight has participated in 15 mortal battles, highlighting his extensive military experience and valor, and 14 for ouvre faith at Tramicene. This means that he fought in defense of his faith in the Battle of Tramicene, which suggests his dedication to his religious convictions and the Christian cause. In liste thrice and a slain his foe. So this phrase liste thrice, this particular phrase means he has effortlessly slain his enemies 3 times during battles, showcasing his skill and prowess as a warrior. This ilk worthy knight hath been also. So here we see that the use of ilke worthy emphasizes the knight's honorable nature and reputation, which is consistent throughout the narrative. Sometime with the Lord of Palati. So he had served previously under the Lord of Palati. Palestine, indicating his connections and service to noble causes in foreign lands also. Again, another heathen in Turkey. So the knight fought against another pagan in Turkey. This highlights his role in the Crusades and further emphasizes his commitment to his faith. And even more, he had a sovereign prize. So he always earned high praise for his deeds, establishing him as a knight of high merit and respect amongst others. And though that he were worthy, he was wise. So despite being brave and worthy, the knight is also wise, showcasing his intelligence and the balance of both valor and wisdom in his character, and of his sport as meek as is a maid. This means his demeanor is described as meek, similar to that of a maid. This juxtaposition emphasizes his humility and gentleness, contrary to the typical image of a boastful warrior. He never yet no villain nay said. This means the knight has never spoken a word of dishonor or insults. This reinforces his honorable nature and chivalric ideals. In all his life, unto no manner white. So, throughout his life, he has treated everyone with respect, further illustrating his ideal knightly qualities. He was a very perfect, gentle knight. This means that this concluding line summarizes his character. He is a true, perfect, and gentle knight, embodying the virtues of chivalry, honor, and respect. Now here we notice, but for to tell in you of his array. So the phrase introduces a shift to discussing the knight's clothing and overall appearance, suggesting that while he is a noble warrior, his attire is equally significant in understanding him. His horse weren't good, but he was not gay. So the knight's horses are of good quality, indicating his status, but he himself is not dressed flamboyantly, means not gay, means not perfectly, suggesting modesty and a lack of concern for ostentation. Of fustian he wore a jippon. So he wears a jippon, a type of tunic made of fustian, a coarse cloth. So this choice of fabric reflects practicality and functionality over luxury, emphasizing his humility. At besmotted with his habergeon. So his garment is besmotted or stained with his hauberk. Hauberk means a type of armor. This shows that he has recently returned from battle, reinforcing his identity as a warrior rather than a dandy. For he was late ye come from his voyage. So he has just recently arrived from a journey. Voyage means journey. So referring to his military campaigns or crusades, indicating the hardships he has faced and his commitment to his cause, and went for to do his pilgrimage. So now he is going to undertake a pilgrimage. This indicates a transition from his martial life to a spiritual journey, showcasing his devotion and the multifaceted aspects of his character. Now here we see with him there was his son, a young squire. So the squire is introduced as the knight's son, indicating a lineage of knighthood. The use of young here suggests youthfulness and potential. A lovier and a lusty bachelor. So the squire is portrayed as a romantic. Lovier means a romantic and lively young man. Lusty bachelor means a lively young man, hinting at his youthful passions and perhaps his idealistic view of love. With locks cruel as they were laid in press. So his hair is curly as if arranged with care. Laid in press means arranged with care, indicates that he takes pride in his appearance, which is a contrast to the knight's modesty. Of 20 years of age he was, I guess. So the narrator estimates the squire's age to be around 20, emphasizing his youth and inexperience compared to his father, while highlighting the typical age of a young knight in training. Of his stature he was of even length. So the squire is described as having a balanced stature, indicating physical fitness and agility, which were highly regarded traits for a knight. And wonderly deliver and of green strength. So he is deliver, quick and agile and strong, suggesting he has the skill set to become a competent knight, emphasizing his readiness for chivalric responsibilities. Now here we see, and he hath been some time in Chai Veshi. So the squire has participated in Chai Veshi. Chai Veshi is a term for knightly training or service, indicating that he has practical experience in combat and adventure. In Flanders, in Artois and Picardy. So Picardy, he has served in wars or conflicts in Flanders, Artois and Picardy, showcasing his worldly experiences and valor, and borne him wheel as of so little space. So, despite his limited time in the field, he has conducted himself well, suggesting competence and potential for growth in his chivalric role, in hope to stulane in his lady grace. So, his actions are driven by the desire to win favor with ladies, revealing his romantic aspirations and motivation to prove himself as a worthy knight. Embroidered was he as it were a mead. So he is richly adorned, means embroidered means adorned like a meadow, implying he wears elaborate clothing decorated with flowers, enhancing his youthful and vibrant character. All full of fresh flowers, white and red. So the clothing is described as full of fresh white and red flowers, symbolizing youth, beauty, and perhaps love, further emphasizing his romantic nature. Since he was or flirting all the day. So he spends his days in singing or playing the flute, portraying him as a cheerful and artistic individual, which further enhances his youthful demeanor. He was as fresh as in the month of July. Of May. So, this simile emphasizes his freshness and vitality, suggesting a youthful enthusiasm and the blossoming of life in spring. Short was his gown with sleeves long and wide. So the squire's gown is described as short with long wide sleeves, a fashionable choice suggesting he is in tune with the trends of his time. Well could he sit on horse and fair ride. So this particular line shows that he is skilled at riding horses, which is a key ability for a knight, and fair ride implies gracefulness and confidence in his equestrian skills. He could songs make and well endowed. So he is also adept at composing songs and writing well, indicating that he possesses artistic talents alongside his martial abilities. Just an eke dance and wheel portray and write. This means his skills extend to jousting and dancing, suggesting versatility and an understanding of courtly behaviors and aesthetics important for a young man of noble birth. So who he loved that by night tale. This means this line shows or reveals his passionate nature, especially in love, highlighting his youthful exuberance or infatuation. Now here we see he sleep no more than doth a nightingale. So he is so consumed by love that he sleeps as little as a nightingale sings, portraying an intense romantic fervor, reinforcing his restlessness and longing. Curtis he was lovely and serviceable. So the squire is courteous, humble, and service oriented, highlighting his noble character and training in chivalric values, and carve by fond his father at the table. So he serves his father at the table, which is an act of respect and duty, which shows the proper behavior expected in a noble household and his acknowledgement of the knight's status. Now here we see a Yemen had he and servant's name. This line introduces a yeoman or yeoman, Yeoman, who is a servant or a freeman who serves in a noble household but has his own skills. So here we see that servants Namo. This means he had no other servants. At that time, for him, Liste writes so. So at that time suggests a specific point in the narrative. Liste means wished or wanted, indicating he decided to ride, and he was clad in coat and hood of grain. This means the yeoman is described as wearing a green coat and hood, which signifies his status and connection to nature, perhaps hinting at his role in the forest or a forester. A sheaf of peacock oars bright and keen. So he carries a sheaf of arrows, specifically peacock arrows, known for their vibrant feathers. Bright and keen conveys they are colorful and sharp. Under his belt he bar full thriftily. So under his belt implies he carries these arrows practically. Full thriftily means he does so resourcefully, indicating his preparedness. Well could he dress his tackle yeomanly. So tackle refers to his equipment or gear. Dress means to set or adjust, suggesting he is skilled at handling his equipment in a professional manner typical of a yeoman. His oars drooped not with feathers low. So his arrows do not droop or hang down low, indicating they are well made or well cared for, symbolic of his competence. And in his hand he bar a mighty bow. So he carries a powerful bow, emphasizing his role as a skilled archer, an important aspect of a yeoman's skill set. A knot-head had he with a brown visage. This means that knot head likely refers to a nut head, suggesting his head is somewhat flat. Brune visage indicates he has a brown or tanned complexion, possibly from working outdoors. Of woodcraft well could he all the usage. So he is well versed in woodcraft, meaning he has extensive knowledge of the woods, hunting and preserving nature. Upon his arm he bar a gay bracer. So he wears a bracer, a type of arm guard for archery, described as gay, indicating its exquisite or colorful. And by his side, a sword and a bowkiller. This means he carries a sword and a bowkiller, which is a small shield, at his side, further emphasizing his readiness for combat and protection. And on that other side, a gay dagger. This means that on the opposite side, he also bears a gay dagger, which is a decorated or fine dagger, and it indicates a sign of status and utility. Harness well and sharp as point of spear. This means harness means well equipped or adorned. So the dagger is sharp as point of spear, denoting its lethality and the yeoman's attention to his weapons. Here we see a Christopher on his breast of silver sheen. This means he wears a Christopher, a medallion depicting Saint Christopher, which is a symbol of protection and faith, made of shiny silver. And horn he bar, the baldric was of green. So he carries a horn used for signaling, and his baldric means belt or fabric is green, complementing his outfit. A forester was he, soothly as I guess. So this line concludes by identifying him as a forester, suggesting he manages or works in the forest, with the phrase soothly as I guess, implying this is the speaker's honest opinion or inference about him. There was also a nun, a prioress. So this line introduces a nun, specifically a prioress, who oversees a convent. So the mention of nun and prioress establishes her religious status. That of her smiling was full, simple and coy. So her smile is described as very much simple and coy, suggesting a modest and demure demeanor which was desirable in a lady of her position. Higher, greatest oath was but by Saint Loy. So her greatest oath is by Saint Loy, hinting at her piety, yet also suggests a somewhat frivolous use of oaths. This sets a tone of subtle irony regarding her character. And she was clapped Madame Eagletine. So she is called Madame Eagletine, a name that carries connotations of refinement and elegance, but also of a certain genteel affectations, perhaps touching upon her vanity. Full wheel she sung the service divine. This means that she sang divine service well, illustrating her adherence to religious duties and the significance of music in worship during the period. And tuned in her nose full seemly. So her way of singing is characterized as and tuned in her nose, perhaps suggesting a nasal tone which could be seen as a sign of gentility or an affectation in her manner. And freshens she spark full fair and fettishly. This means she speaks French full fair and fettishly, highlighting her education and social status as refinement often included knowledge of French which was prestigious in medieval England. After the School of Stratford at Bow. So this line suggests that her French was learned from a particular school in Stratford at Bow, indicating her education but also perhaps a degree of inferiority to the higher status French spoken in Paris. For French of Paris was to higher unknown. So here it's implied that she doesn't know the Parisian French, reinforcing her limited exposure and suggesting a certain provinciality or lack of worldly experience. At mate well ye taught was she with ale. So this phrase indicates that she was well versed in etiquette, especially during meals, emphasizing the importance of manners in her social environment. She let no morsel from her lips fall. This means that this image conveys her meticulousness and attention to propriety. She is careful not to waste food, illustrating both her manners and possibly her vanity. Knave wet his fine grease in his sauce deep. So she does not wet her fingers deep in the sauce, implying a heightened sense of cleanliness and decorum, traits valued in women of her social standing. Well could she carry a morsel and well came. So this line indicates her skill in eating daintily, which reflects her refinement and consciousness of her appearance while eating. That no drop may fill upon higher breast. So she ensures that no drop of food falls on her breast. Continuing this particular thing shows her fastidiousness and delicacy in behavior during meals. In courtesy was set full mutual her list. So her desire for courtesy was very strong, emphasizing that her behaviors and manners align closely with the societal expectations of nobility for women. Higher over lip wiped she so clean. So she wipes her upper lip clean, signaling both her attentiveness to her appearance and a concern for cleanliness in a very literal sense. That in her cope there was no furthing sense. So there was no grease seen in her cup, indicating her careful consumption and perhaps an ironic contrast to the more indulgent lifestyles of other characters. Of grease when she drunken had her draught. So even after drinking, she manages to keep her cup clean, portraying her as the epitome of decorum and cleanliness in social situations, reflecting the values of her class. Full seemly after her meat she wrought. So the final scene, this particular final scene reinforces her composure and dignity even after eating, showing that her behavior aligns with the ideals of a refined woman of her time. Now, here we see that and psychically she was a great despot. So here narrator describes the prioress as someone who is cheerful and well mannered. The word psychically implies certainty, emphasizing her pleasing demeanor and full pleasant and amiable of port. So the prioress is characterized as full pleasant, very pleasant and amiable or friendly, settling her as approachable and charming. Of port here refers to her outward appearance and posture, suggesting she carries herself with grace. And painted higher to counterfeit cheer. So this line indicates that the prioress makes an effort. Paint means effort to mimic the cheerfulness associated with courtly life. Here, counterfeit implies an intention to appear gentle and refined, which also hints at her desire for social status of court and being statlich of manner. So here the text shows or elaborates on the prioress' efforts to embody the manners of the court. Is that Lich suggests that she is dignified and appropriate in her behavior, reinforcing her desire to fit into her higher social circles and to bend Holden dignity of reverence. So this shows that she aims to be regarded as someone worthy of respect. The pursuit of respectability reflects her societal ambitions while linking to the image. Now, here we see she was so charitable and so piteous. So, the prioress is portrayed as charitable and compassionate. Piteous means compassionate. This suggests that she has a genuine concern for the welfare of others, enhancing her character's moral aspect. She hold weep if that she saw a mouse. So this line shows her sensitivity. She would cry upon seeing a mouse. The image of her weeping for a small creature adds an almost exaggerated sense of empathy which borders on sentimentality. Caught in a trap if it were dead or bled. So the prioress compassion extends even to the suffering of a trapped animal, regardless of its condition. Deed means dead. Bleed refers to bleeding or suffering. This highlights her profound sympathy but also may suggest an element of mockery regarding her excessively delicate nature. Of small houndless hate she that she fed. So the line reveals her affection for small dogs which she cares for by feeding. This detail positions her as nurturing, reinforcing her role as a motherly figure despite her position in a convent. With roasted flesh or milk and wastel breed. So the mention of feeding this particular feeding her dogs roasted flesh or milk and wastel breed means fine bread indicates her wealth and perhaps suggests extravagance. It portrays her as someone who indulges her pets, highlighting her softer side but also her possible vanity. But sore wept she if one of him were dead. So this passage shows her sensitivity as she would deeply mourn if one of her dogs died, showing a strong emotional attachment, or if men smote it with a yard smart. So the prioress is distressed if someone hurt her dogs with a stick. So yard smart means stick, which displays her protective nature and her excessive compassion for animals. And all was conscience and tender heart. So the closing line emphasizes that her actions stem from a compassionate conscience and a tender heart. It shows her character's duality. She is both gentle and overly sentimental, potentially critiqued as being more concerned with appearances than true piety. Full semily her wimple pinched was. So the prioress wimple, which is a type of head covering, is described as being neatly pinned. This suggests her attention to modesty and appearance, reflecting her genteel disposition. His nose treads her even grey as glass. So her nose is described as treads, implying it is delicately shaped. Her eyes are grey as glass, which suggests both clarity and coldness, potentially indicating a certain detachment or superficiality. Her mouth full, small, and there's too oft and read. So her mouth is small, soft, and red, emphasizing her femininity and attractiveness. So the softness may connote sweetness, but red also highlights her desirability, possibly hinting at vanity. But psychically, she had a fair forehead. This phrase shows that she certainly has a fair forehead, which was a sign of beauty during Chaucer's time. It may also suggest intelligence or nobility. It was almost a Spain brood eye trough. This means her forehead is described as almost a span wide, about 8 inches, suggesting that it is quite large, which might have been considered an indication of good breeding and wisdom. For hardily she was not undergrown. This means that she here this line asserts that she is not small or undernourished. Instead, she is well proportioned, reinforcing her status and secure place in society. Full fades was her cloak as I was wore. So her cloak is noted for being stylish or fetching, suggesting that she is fashion conscious. The phrase as I was wore so indicates the narrator's observational role in describing her carefully. Of small coral about his arm she bore. So the small coral jewelry she wears around her arm adds to her elegance and taste. Coral here symbolizes protection and vitality, hinting at her refined and perhaps wealthy background. A pair of beads guarded at with green. So the small coral jewelry that this lady wears that this particular prioress wears a rosary beads, a jewelry which is adorned with green beads, possibly referring to her piety. The color green might symbolize hope and fertility or also indicate her envy. And thereon hang or a brooch of gold full sheen. So she has a shiny gold brooch indicating her wealth and desire to embellish her appearance further. This detail contributes to her vanity, on which there was first write a crowned A. So the brooch has a crown letter A inscribed on it. This could stand for amor, means love, or reference, another significant term possibly indicating her aristocratic associations. And after amor vincit omnia. So this inscription translates to love conquers all. This famous phrase underscores the importance of love in her life, but it may also signal a potential hypocrisy in her character, since her lifestyle and priorities seems at odds with the serious devotion implied by the inscription. Then with this video lecture ends here. Hope this video lecture will help you in your exams. Thank you.